Good?
Well sorted.
All right. That's the very, very official gavel. It is Thursday, January 23rd at 6:30 p.m. and we will officially call to order the City of Delaware Parks and Recreation Advisory Board Council. Can you take roll?
Ms. Cunningham? Mr. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Haywood?
Here.
Ms. McWinney? Here. Mr. Rush?
Here.
Ms. Scholl?
Here.
Ms. Stogler?
Here.
Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Councilman Jones? Vice Chairwoman Hivinger?
Here.
And Chairman Bricker.
Here. All right. First order of business, can I get a motion for someone to approve the absence of Councilman Jones and
Ms. Cunningham.
Ms. Cunningham?
Also approve. Second.
All right. Can you call it? Yeah, sorry.
That's it. Mr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Haywood?
Yes.
Ms. McWinney?
Yes.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Scholl?
Yes.
Ms. Stogler?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Hivinger?
Yes.
Chairman Bricker.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. On to number 2, the approval of minutes from our last meeting on November 19th, which you all received. Does anybody have any comments, questions, discussion points from those minutes? All right. Hearing none, can I get a motion for approval?
All motion?
Second.
And can you take roll?
Mr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Haywood?
Yes.
Ms. McWinney?
Yes.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Scholl?
Yes.
Ms. Stogler?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Hivinger?
Yes.
Chairman Bricker.
Yes.
Thank you.
On to number 3, public comments. Hearing none, we'll move on to number 4, updates from the YMCA.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good evening.
Roger Hannafin, Associate Executive Director, Delaware YMCA. Coming in, I apologize, you do not have a report in front of you. It was due on the holiday and we just missed it. So we will get you an updated report for your minutes. Since we last met, we have had a few city programs happen, including Calls from the North Pole. If you're not familiar with that, parents fill out a form and they get a call from elves and Santa and Mrs. Claus. It's extremely fun. We also had the daddy-daughter dance that was held on a Saturday. It was the perfect amount of attendance because we had literally 4 spots left. So last year we sold out. This year we didn't have to turn anyone away, which was great. That was held at OWU in the Student Center. It's great to work with them as partners. We had over 400 participants at the event with ice cream and dancing and all kinds of merriment. The basketball league, grades 3 through 6 has started at Mingo. They play every Saturday morning and they have their practices Monday through Friday evenings at the Mingo Park Rec Center. The league numbers are down a bit this year. That's a trend that's kind of continuing with basketball we're seeing too in general. And then we have registration now open for for soccer and for baseball. So people can start signing up for those programs as well.
All right.
And that's what's going on.
Any questions for Roger?
Never mind. I was thinking Mother Son Superhero, but that's
Mother Son Superhero Party, thank you, is registering as well. So that'll be March 13th at Mingo Park.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a comment about tennis?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, we have 24, this is the largest indoor sign-up we've had since we started it. This is the 3rd year. So we have 24 kids in it this year.
Amazing.
Yeah, and we
And-
already have kids signing up for the 2nd session too.
And that's Saturday afternoons at Mingo Park.
Yes.
Fantastic. Love it.
On a personal note, spring, summer, adult softball hasn't started yet. Sign up.
I'll have to double check. I know.
I haven't seen anything.
I don't know. I think they all were put in the system at the same time, so it might be in the system as well. I
Okay.
know. I know all the youth is for sure. I can double check that though, but
That's
I think
fine.
they probably put it all in at the same time, so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Roger.
Yep, thank you.
All right, moving on to number 5, discussion and input of City of Delaware Recreation Needs Assessment.
So I'd like to introduce Austin and Nicole. They're both from Pros Consulting. They're gonna they've been doing interviews all day today to a lot of focus groups in Delaware. Dee Dee was at one of them today, so she's doing double duty tonight. And one of the why we moved the park board meeting to Thursday is so that we could really get our parks board involved in this process also. They're gonna kind of survey, poll, get input from our parks board so that they can incorporate into the plan, but I'll let Austin and Nicole kind of take it and go from here.
Good evening. Oh, come on now. So, my name's Austin Hostetler, Nicole Haverland, Pros Consulting out of Indianapolis. So, my voice is getting a little scratchy at this point of the day because we have been talking an awful lot today. So, but we've had really good conversations today, and this is kind of our first day of external stakeholder engagement. So talking to a lot of user groups, a lot of special interest groups, a lot of people supporting different facets of parks, recreation, and services here in Delaware. And so I have a list of about 9 different questions that I've been asking those groups. And so I'd like to just kind of have that kind of discussion with you all during this time, just ask the questions and then just kind of have a dialogue with you all about your opinions. So that way we can get them documented, and again, we don't correlate any one comment with one particular person. We look at all this in totality, and so we look at this for what are the emerging themes that are coming out of all the responses across all these various stakeholders, because this is really going to help us with foundational understanding of the system about needs, desires, unmet need, challenges, strengths of the system, but then also will help identify the themes that we need to test with the overall community via the statistically valid survey and then our online survey opportunities. So this is kind of a really important part of the process because we use this to kind of leap towards other research processes. So that's kind of what we're doing, and that's kind of the intent of this. So I guess before I start kind of asking you all questions, do you have kind of any questions for us about the process or anything?
Well, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Very talkative.
Good. All right. So the first question that we have is, and you could think of all these questions with different hats. You might be, like this, like earlier today, we're talking about like, tennis, and we're talking about sports, but you're also, park board members. So you're also residents. So you think about this through different lenses, if you will. But what do you think people value the most about parks and recreation in Delaware? And when we say parks and recreation system, we're meaning facilities, land, programs, services, experiences, the whole kit and caboodle there. So what do you think people value the most about parks and recreation services here in Delaware?
I think people appreciate that the parks are safe environments for kids and families to go to. The system provides a variety of activities for kids as well as adults. And I think that there's a lot of emphasis on healthy choices in living and things like that, especially with the recent smoking ban going on.
Absolutely. What else? What do citizens value?
I would say accessibility. I work in the DD field,
Mhm.
developmental disabilities, so I would say that they're accessible for everybody and all.
Absolutely.
I think location, we have parks spread out around the community. And I would agree that there's a variety of activities that families have the ability to participate in if they so choose.
Absolutely.
I'll kind of piggyback on those. I think abundance is a good word. That they do a good job of making sure that they're in a lot of locations, but they're not all the same. There's a lot of different ones, whether it be different by sport or different by activities, from splash pad to a soccer complex or, you know, baseball, tennis area, whatever it might be. I think they do a good job of that, and I think they do a good job of, if there's not land in one area, of making some smaller pocket parks,
Yeah.
or whatever that might be. So it's not just a huge community park. There's some pocket parks kind of sprinkled
Sure.
in throughout the area as well.
Yeah, different shapes and sizes, different experiences offered,
Right.
different lengths of stay for different parks. Okay.
I think we hit the age demographics very well across the whole spectrum. So there's something for everyone.
Absolutely. What do we think about the park system? Again, programs, facilities, land, finances, management, you know, we're talking about the whole holistic approach to parks and recreation system. Is there anything that needs more improvement or maybe more focus? Because again, we're doing a plan, and so we're talking about the things that people are valuing. Are there things that just need more improvement or more focus in terms of Delaware's parks and recreation system?
You know, I think one thing is maybe, and I don't know exactly how to do this, but some kind of a PR focus where, you know, I lived here, I've only been here 8 years, which isn't a long time, but until I joined the Parks Board, I really didn't know about many of the parks around here. Now I'm kind of isolated on the southern tip of Delaware down by
Sure.
Source Point, so a little bit of an outlier, but and maybe that's not as much of an issue for people that live here closer to the city.
Absolutely.
So do you mean as a whole, or do you mean one site in particular?
It can be as specific as you want or as a whole. So there's no real wrong answer we're looking for here.
Sure. So what I wrote down to that when I first read it
Mhm.
was, in a sense, not maybe redoing, but revamping the bathrooms at Mingo.
Mhm.
I grew up in Delaware. I grew up going to Mingo, lived here my whole life.
Yeah,
And in the 40 years I've been here, they've really not changed much.
sure.
So, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's what needs to happen.
No, absolutely, but updated infrastructure and, you know, looking at everything has a life cycle. So what is it that we do in terms of component renewal, repair, rehab, recapitalization? You know, how do we get facilities to their life cycle? And so, you know, what's the life cycle of a bathroom, and what's that look like over the course of that
Life
period? No, it's great point. That's a great point.
I'd like to see initiatives that encourage community to get into the parks and learn about the parks, the flora, the fauna, the things in the park. We have a river running through this community, and there's so much that we could learn and that we could teach community members of all ages about the natural resources we have here. And I think that's one very big missing component to our system.
We heard a little bit about that today too, about, you know, maximizing those natural resources, and
Yeah.
it's educational, it's
Yes.
activating those spaces, it's all those things, you know. It's kind of allowing the city to, you know, this is what we're about in terms of
Yes.
the nature and environment, and here's how we're gonna move forward with it. Good. What else? Any other improvement or more focus kind of areas?
I'm going to agree with the statement earlier about PR. When we moved here 5 years ago, I had to do a lot of searching to
Yeah.
find, and I just felt like it should be easier to find out about the parks and what they have to offer. Even just the website, I think, could use some
Sure.
freshening.
That'll be a very big, important topic that we ask the community in general is, how do you learn about things and how do you prefer to learn about things, those modalities and methods?
Yeah.
Be critical. Okay.
I'm gonna go from a recreation standpoint,
Sure.
in that the city has a very unique relationship with the YMCA. But I think it's very confusing for residents on who's signing up for what, where we're signing up
Sure.
for, who's running the program. I think it's great that there's an abundance of offerings, and I
Mhm.
think if there's anything you wanna do, somebody in Delaware probably offers it. It's just figuring out who we need to go to, who's running it.
Yeah.
And all that other, you know,
Yeah.
kind of stuff that just gets a little confusing.
The central point of information and.
Right.
Absolutely. Are there any population groups that are underserved or unserved, in your opinion? So, different population groups, I mean, we can talk everything from age to geographics to, you know, however you want to dissect a population group. Is there any groups out there that, in your opinion, in terms of parkland, access to space, programs, services, opportunities, that are maybe underserved or unserved?
Kind of like I said earlier about kids with disabilities and wheelchair accessible and being able to go take them out at the park.
Mhm.
You know, we can pull up in a van or a bus and then we don't have much to go to, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
You know, more swings, more.
So the whole idea of universal design and inclusion, and, you know, what are those design standards, and, you know, what are the experiences that are for everybody
Mhm.
that are out there?
I recently visited a park in Florida that was all-inclusive.
Yeah.
So every single play structure was accessible by wheelchair or an easy transfer. It was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. My kids are able-bodied and they enjoyed every single piece of that equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So, including students with mobility issues or children with I'm working with school students. Children
Yeah.
with mobility issues does not exclude anyone.
Right.
Everyone can play.
Right.
So I could not agree more.
There's a lot of communities that, you know, obviously you want to make universal design and accessibility a part of every design standard in every park, but a lot of communities are starting then with like a destination, all-inclusive play, this park or facility, like the way, like you mentioned, because you can prove it out, saying this is
Yes.
the level of expectation, we can do this, and then disseminate that throughout the system.
And I would say that I feel like on the south end of the city, we have a gap in the size and kind
Yeah.
of parks that we see in other areas of the community.
Good point.
I would say, since I'm kind of in the middle of it, we don't have a lot of programming for our 12 to 18-year-olds. So I'm saying just turning 12 and about to turn 18, if you've not, in a sense, chosen a sport,
Yeah.
there's not a lot for those folks. If you want to play soccer, good luck. If you want to play baseball, good luck. So I feel like some of those rec sports, for that age group, because they're
Mhm.
too young for the adult leagues, they're too old for
Sure.
some of the other stuff. And it probably would take a while to build something like that up, but I feel like we're lacking.
Absolutely.
A part of that, speaking of baseball, part of that is due to influx of traveling teams,
Mm-hmm.
and that's taken away from the availability of the baseball program. I've lived here 51 years. I grew up playing t-ball 4 years of age to all the way up to almost high school, and even coached Little League baseball here. It's just going from begging for coaches because there's so many kids
Yeah.
to, well, we don't even have enough kids. Is to me is a red strike. You know, it's something that maybe we can focus on how to get those kids back.
Sure.
So, you know, and you just heard from the Y that the signups were down
Mhm.
in basketball. So it's, you gotta find a way to get those kids back. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there is, you mentioned kind of a gap in the south section, and there's the southern section of the city, it's almost not part of the city. There's this little
Yeah.
island down there, and I'm on that little island. And I think Ted's talked about maybe at some point in the not too distant future, having a city park down there, which I
Mhm.
think would eliminate that gap. So that's,
Right. Yeah, you bring up a good point about perceived and real barriers. They're both barriers, but there's perception of distance and disconnection, but there's also real barriers of length of stay or length of, downtown to the southern part of the city. So it's
yeah,
a
we
great
do have a
point.
neighborhood park down there, but no, not a real city park.
Mm-hmm. Okay. in terms of parks and recreation, the system, again, programs, facilities, land, what have you, what's going on really well that should not be changed? Because, it's easy to talk about, improvements and things that, we want to do, and that's part of the plan, but what are some things that Delaware's doing a really good job at X, Y, and Z. Let's make sure we not lose sight of kind of the strengths of our system here. So what are those things?
Community involvement when making decisions. We had a night at the Second Ward Community Initiative where we were discussing a proposed park in that area, and we had the residents in that area come and look at designs and talk, and we did the same thing at the Veterans Park near the Y. So I think continuing on with a lot of community involvement would be beneficial.
Absolutely. Transparency.
I would agree, and I would also say that really being responsive to different groups that come in and talk. We've all been on the board for a while now, and we've seen pickleball group come in and request places to play pickleball. They have places to play pickleball. The cricket club come in and requesting, and Ted's working really hard at making those things happen. So I think that you don't see that everywhere, and I think it's a very nice part of the system that I don't want changed. That they're listening, and it's hard to respond quickly when you're in a system and there's fixed resources and budget's already planned, but he's managed to get things done. So it's a huge positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, and this is a tribute, I think primarily to Ted, that we're very proactive in planning for additional parks and hike, bike paths and green spaces. And it seems like every meeting Ted has a new proposal that we're looking at this, we're looking at that. So I think that we're very proactive in our thinking, not just saying we got a nice system, let's keep it as it is. And again, I think that's a tribute to Ted for pushing that.
Not happy with the status quo.
Correct.
Well, I like that everything that we're putting into is slightly different. Like, we're not doing the same parks everywhere around town. So, if there's something that you want to try, you can go to a different area. It's not all standardized.
Sure, absolutely.
I would also add that I think the parks are very well maintained and cared for.
I really like how the parks, over the last few years, they haven't changed a lot, while I've been, growing up in Delaware. Because I, grew up going to, Mingo and to Smith Park and to Blue Limestone. And so I have, different memories that, I associate with each one. And I like that, when I go there today, I can still, be reminded of that. And they're, still seeing, the same park that I went to when I was younger.
Absolutely. What do you see are some of the biggest challenges that parks and recreation and programs and services they're going to face over the next 5 years as a city? What are some of those, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, population increases and, what are some of those challenges that the city is going to need to be prepared to address in terms of parks and recreation services?
I think maybe the biggest challenge is money. I think we have more ideas than money. And I think, improvements in facilities like Mingo, new floor, new bathrooms, whatever, new parks, new bike paths, all that takes money, and we have a budget, but obviously not a budget to do everything we'd like to do.
Right. That's going to be part of our work, is to look at the X's and O's, and any recommendation we make is there has to be an operational and maintenance cost to anything, and so that's something that we're definitely going to take serious and be part of this plan. Absolutely.
Keeping up with the growth. That's what I said that earlier. It's just, we're starting to bust. But that's a good bust.
Right.
That's what we want to see, is we want to see our city grow and develop, and, young families, old families.
Absolutely.
So.
But with the growth and development, we have to keep the green spaces. So there's that delicate balance.
And honestly, that was my first thought to go along with that, is land. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, is because land is so valuable and at a premium right now, whether it's for home builders, businesses, whatever it is. The city's going to have to take a look at what's available, and Delaware's somewhat landlocked. There's not really a lot of room for expansion as far as the city of Delaware goes unless they start annexing into other areas.
Mhm.
So taking a look at whatever land is available that makes sense for the communities that are being built and figuring out how to maybe look at a new park or whatever to keep
Absolutely.
up with the growing population.
It's a great point. Ted was talking to us about that today, about land acquisition strategies and criteria. You know, how do we make that decision, and how do we, again, proactively, how do we approach that? It's a great point.
I will say, going back to your previous question, one of the things I think Delaware does very well is make sure that there is a community park within a new community.
Mm.
So that does at least create some opportunity.
Sure.
Is it a standard set when new developers come in? Do we know?
It's not necessarily a standard, I mean, it is, but it
Highly
isn't.
encouraged.
Yeah, it's highly
Okay, so
encouraged.
it's not something where you
But-
say, no, you can't come in unless you have X, Y, Z amenities for your neighborhood.
Yeah, we do require, parks in an open space. There's a requirement in our zoning that allows for that, yeah. But it's not like a blueprint of like, this park has to go here, like
Mhm,
this.
yeah,
It's
okay.
just the open space requirement.
Are there any facilities and/or amenities, recreation amenities or facilities, really needed within the community, either now or you foresee that in the future as population grows? Spaces and places?
I think for the most part, they do a pretty good job, but I think one of the things, and it's a topic that's come up here several times, and actually we'll talk a little bit later about it, is a pool. Jack Florence is great,
Mhm.
but when you look at other communities our size, they have multiple pools. We have one pool.
Sure.
And the pool that we have is not as big as some of the other communities.
Right.
So we have a lot of problems with overcrowding, and again, addressing and trying to figure out how to make those changes. But as Delaware continues to grow, it's
Right.
not going to do anything but get busier and busier.
Right. And so more towards the outdoor pool?
Yes.
Outdoor type
Yes,
of water?
outdoor pool, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
So I think a lot of residents just utilize that amenity that we have, and it's a fantastic amenity to have. It's a costly amenity to have.
Sure.
But it's one of those that it gets overcrowded a lot.
I think during like the winter time now, my kids are doing basketball all the time, and every time that we go to either Mingo or the Y, the gyms are both packed. It's either pickleball, basketball, volleyball. I think another facility like that would be utilized at least throughout the winter and probably all year long.
Multi-purpose indoor space?
Yeah.
I would also say something like the skate park.
Hmm.
I know like in the summertime, especially when the pool is overcrowded, people are over there. And my thought would be put something like that on the west side of town.
Hmm.
I think it would get used, especially for the older elementary, teenage age. Something like that.
Sure.
Maybe not that in particular, but something for that age group on the opposite side of town, other than the Y,
Yeah.
would be used and utilized.
A different type of experience,
Mhm.
different type of outdoor experience.
Yep.
I'd like to see the, continuation of the path, and I'd like to see it, very well lit, so
Mhm.
it's safe. And we already talked about this, but that just ensuring that we continue to have space for future parks to grow.
Mhm.
I think that's with the growth, that would be, one of the things I had written down was, I worry about where are we gonna have more parks in the
Mhm.
Right.
future? If we're building, houses in the county for 200,000 more people.
Right.
Like, I want that to be an intentional, well thought out
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Absolutely.
I think to some degree, this is a harder question to answer because we don't really know what the relationship's gonna look like with the Y. And so without knowing that, we could need a lot more.
Yes.
All right.
Sure. And we just don't know what that is yet.
Sure.
Can I interrupt for a second? Everybody just pull your microphones just a little closer to your faces when you're talking, because I'm having trouble picking some of you up. I'm sorry. I know they're uncomfortable, but I'm not comfortable. Thanks.
That's a very good point, though. And that's part of the process why we're doing this plan. What are our community needs? What are unmet needs? What are the existing levels of service for indoor space, for outdoor space, for all these facilities? And where does that mesh. And so, yeah, to your point, that's part of our job. So that's a very good, important question to answer, and we're going to get there.
I think going back to like having another outdoor pool, I think that would help solve like the issue with like the gap from what we were talking about earlier from like 12 to 18. I think a lot of teenagers, like at least at my school, would want to use that.
Mhm.
And like I know a lot of like my friends would want to like go to a new pool, because a lot of people drive like all the way to Zambezi Bay just to like go somewhere different than Mingo. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about a lot of different things here then. So what are some of those key outcomes that you want to see come from this planning process? I mean, one that you mentioned is probably a big outcome that you want to see from this plan, not to put, answer that question for you, but help us help you. What are some of those big things that you want to make sure that come out of this planning process?
I think just the direction, transparency, not having, I think the key to any good community is having a long-term vision, not being narrow-minded and looking 3 to 5 years out, look 15 to 20 years out, and figure out, based on trends today, what's happening within the city and where we see growth happening. And because we see growth happening here, we see a park here, and this is what we want it to be. And it may not be 15 years down the road, but that's the direction we see going. So at least it gives us kind of a layout of the future of the city.
Absolutely.
And a plan that represents the desires of the community and that it's financially feasible.
Yeah. Implementable, realistic, actionable, but still looking long range,
Right.
There's going to be things down the pike that we need to take note of. Let me ask it this way then. So if you could change one thing about the system, what would it be? And so we're kind of making you prioritize a little bit. Another way of thinking about this is if we do a 5 to 10 year action plan, knowing that we're also going to highlight things visionary down the road. All right, so the year's 2025 or the year's 2030. I will have hoped that, by then the city of Delaware has accomplished this. What is this?
So, as a member of this board and as a person that has grown up in this community and watched it ebb and flow in lots of different ways, I would hope by 2025 we have at least 3 pools. We have the Y acting as the Y, the Delaware City Rec Department acting as the Delaware City Rec Department, and that they are not intermingled. They are separate. That's just my personal opinion. Sure. I would also say that we have by then maybe 10 new parks, and we have a trail system that you can go from the east side of town to the west side of town, to the north side of town, to the south side of town.
Connected.
Yes, and well lit, because us trail runners that want to run at 4 a.m. January 10th without a headlamp.
Yikes.
Because you forgot it.
I just picturing you wearing a headlamp. So.
There's a flashlight on your phone.
So.
Absolutely.
That's because some of this I can remember talking about in 1994, and it still hasn't happened.
Sure.
I'm still waiting.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would agree. I would like to see another pool. I think that that's going to be inevitable in the way we're growing in this community. I've already said I'd like some nice well-lit paths, and I would like them to be connected. I would like to see, I agree completely that none of our parks are the same, but I'd like to see something unique, like like what we're talking about with just natural play structures, or an obstacle course, or something else. I would love to see, or a 100% accessible park. I would like to see just something very different than what we have. I agree completely. They are different, but I still feel like they kind of go in the same, under the same umbrella. I'd like to just see a completely different style park.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. Some agencies around the country are creating a classification called signature park. So you have your pocket parks, neighborhood parks, regional parks, community, whatever vernacular you want to associate with your system. But some are elevating that and say, what is our signature park? And what is defining our park system? So I'm gonna ask this question. Right now, what would you say is the Delaware Park System's signature facility or signature amenity or what is the stamp,
Probably Mingo, I would think. Mingo's got the pool, it's got the rec center, it's got some tennis courts, some skate area. It's got
It's a lot of experiences there.
yeah.
And it has the history, it's just been there forever. I mean, it's the longest, it's the oldest park.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel though that the splash pad area is competing with that?
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
The splash pad area, to me, is meant for little kids.
It is.
And once you get to be 7 or 8,
Yeah.
you're done with the splash pad. So the rest of your years as an elementary kid through
Yeah.
all of school, it's Mingo. Like
Yeah.
my 2 kids, it's Mingo, Mingo,
I
Mingo.
agree.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
And
I'm
if
just
that's
coming out of that age, you're right, I'm coming out of, into what you're talking about.
And if that's going to be our signature park, and maybe it won't be in the future, but if it is going to be our signature park, maybe it does need new restrooms, maybe it needs a new
Right.
floor in the gym, maybe, needs a little polishing up.
Yeah.
But I feel like it depends on your ability. Because if you're not able, for whatever reason, to be in the pool, you're gonna be at the splash pad and you might be 33. And you might be there with your parents or your relatives or your grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of grandparents that love taking their grandchildren to the splash pad because they, in a sense, don't have to worry about what's going on. So I think it depends on your perspective and your ability. I don't know. Because I think to some it's pretty hit, and it was pretty awesome when Delaware adopted that. So I would say it's a toss-up between the two parks. I also think Smith Park is a draw for some because it's closer to where they live.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on what side of town you're on.
But that's also, again, I'm an outside observer, but just hearing that conversation, it kind of makes you think about, how would you define the park system right now? Like, what is your, Delaware Park System is about this. Is it about these recreation experiences, or is it about this facility that we have? What is it that you're pointing to that's going to articulate to the outsider coming in or the new residents coming in saying, this is what the park system is about. It's our trail system that's connected. Or it's Mingo Park because look at all these experiences and updated. Or is it X Park because we offer this type of programming and we're the ones that do this type of programming and nobody else does this type of programming. That's the type of thinking that a lot of our planning process we want to start instilling and start continuing to have maybe even a further conversation with you all about, what does that look like? And when we get recommendations back from the community, we need to bring them back to you and say, how do we make this into the signature? What is the signature of the Delaware Park System? So just had to ask that question when you said that because it just reminded me of that. But
And it might not be an actual park, and it might be
Right.
a true vision or value statement, so.
Right.
And that's okay too, and we'll get through that in this process as well.
great point.
Because even as you were stating that, the word community just kept coming to mind. And I think as a park system, we should be about community, serving the youngest to the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I talked about earlier, and I go back to tennis, is we start kids at 4 years old. And I started it 6 years ago, and the program that my husband and I run, we've touched almost 400 kids. And there is a need, and we were kind of looking into building an indoor facility up here.
Mm-hmm.
We've been using Ohio Wesleyan, but we rent their courts. We put a lot of money into Ohio Wesleyan, but we would like it to go back into the community. And, we take beginners at any age, 12, first year on the high school team. So it's a lifetime sport, and I would like to continue it growing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is growing.
So anything else?
I'm gonna go to your one
Yeah.
thing, and I echo most people, and we've talked about it a lot, it's the pool. I would definitely like to see see that added. But the other thing I would like to see added is kind of along the trailways. Delaware has a lot of fantastic bike paths. There's a lot of disconnectivity. There's, you know, I live about as far west in Delaware as you can go, and there's a bike path that's great, and then it stops. And then you have to figure out how to get to the next section of the bike path. And I know that there's a plan, and we actually probably just a year or two ago worked on a master plan for that, which is great. But just seeing that come to fruition and seeing us actually complete those pathways, because I think it makes it a lot safer for our kids to get from point A to point B.
Yep.
And it's just convenient for the adults who want to walk it, run it, bike it, whatever it might be.
Well, and it's a good point, because if population really is projected to boom, you know, roadways and everything, those are expensive endeavors. And so the pathway system, a lot of communities, they really do have to be people movers. Like, people have to be using them as transit, as more so than even just like recreation. And so the pathways and greenways and the connectivity is important just as a modality for traveling to and from work and business. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
I'm over on the west side of town too, and we like to walk uptown, go out and eat and drink, and then walk home. And we have to cross streets and go back and forth, or sometimes walk on the roads to get back there. We really need the connection there. But I also do a lot of distance running and biking, and I would really like to see a 5 or 10 mile stretch where you don't have to cross a road, which is hard in city limits. But even just to connect it, and if you just have to cross a couple of roads, just have a straightaway path that you can just go on. Right now, that just isn't around town much at all.
Absolutely. Anything that maybe we haven't discussed or we didn't ask you that you want to make sure that we document at this point? So, you know, look into it more, or you know, we'll be doing this data collection process for a while here. So please, I mean, you can work through Ted to reach out to us and, you know, make sure that we have information, because we always say we can't analyze what we don't have in front of us. So
I know we've mentioned a pool, but I want to add to it a little bit more specific. One that at least has a diving well for diving meets, and then I won't say any more about it.
Well, can you tell us the history? Tell us the history and attraction of having a diving well, because a lot of organizations are getting away from that, but we need to support it with support pieces.
I believe earlier today you may or may not have spoken with Bill Reitz, part of DARTS.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just piggyback off of his comments about the summer swim program.
Yeah,
I don't know
bring up diving at all today. This is good.
Okay, well then I'll bring up the
There
diving
we
for
go.
him, unless, do you want to speak?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It would be a good attraction, as well as pickleball courts, because both are drawn to Delaware. For diving, swim meets, I believe in Delaware, Ohio Wesleyan's the only option. So it just would be beneficial for the whole community.
For an outdoor space, not an indoor space.
It would be lovely to have both, but I'm just speaking outdoor at the moment.
Just the only thing I want to add, and I briefly mentioned the river when we were talking about some of the outreach that I would like to see with like a naturalist or something along those lines. We have a few launches. I would just like to see a little more around that. I think that has grown nicely. I'd like to see a little more advertising and just maybe classes, something to really, it's crazy to me that it's just not a bigger.
activating the waterfront
Yeah,
through,
yeah.
you know, canoe launches,
Yeah.
kayak launches,
Yeah,
paddleboard launch, you know.
yeah, we just haven't really talked about that. And I mean, I haul my kayaks to everywhere else and feel like there's just a missing opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
so.
There's missing programming opportunities there. too.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Well, if you think of something else, please work through Ted to, you know, get in contact with us. I'm running out of business cards, so I apologize. Or plop one down for everybody. But again, we'll be doing this specific type of analysis or data collection for at least another month because we're moving towards survey development. And we have more meetings tomorrow, and then we kind of have a to-do list already developed from today about more documents that we want to look at and other plans, and we're still trying to gather as much information as we can. And so so for anybody else that's up here or in the back, we have comment cards that are up back there on that table. You can fill out your name, address if you'd like to, contact information, but then give us a comment about anything specific down into the weeds all the way to high level, because we use those comment cards as part of the process too. So feel free, anybody again up here who's behind me, there's comment cards over there, please fill them out, and we'll take that information. But yeah, thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch with you all too as we go through this process about what we're finding and what we're bouncing ideas off of you all. So we want to make sure that you're a big part of this process. So we appreciate the time tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make one more comment.
Yeah.
If you have time, but just everyone in this room knows that perhaps you don't realize it as well, but as well as we do. But Delaware is a really special town. I remember not too long after I moved here, and again, I've only been here 8 years, but someone I read an article somewhere where this a small, similar-sized town was saying, if we could only be like Delaware. Delaware is a special place. It's a college town. It's a active downtown area, antique shops, restaurants.
Yeah.
So many things going for us, and we don't want to be an urban city. I think we're a very unique, special place, and I think all the things related to the Parks and Recreation Committee are kind of adding to that. So anything that happens along this line, I think, would be very positive.
Solidifying and unifying the Delaware brand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
you.
much.
That's going to come back.
All right. All good with number 5, right? As far as the discussion of this on the staff comments, we're good? Okay. All right, we will move on to number 6, staff comments.
I wanted to apologize for adding this late, but something that's kind of important that we, so dealing with the pool, Josh alluded to earlier, we're going to talk about some things. So we've been working with the YMCA on some solutions to some of our capacity issues that we have out there. There's not one golden egg that we can just, that's going to solve all those. So we're looking at several different things. And one of the things we took a look at was the rules. What rules we have in place now. So we looked at other communities and what rules they have. And one of the big changes in there we wanted to talk about was groups or organizations where buses come in and drop off a lot of people that come into the pool. So we looked at what are some options there. So having chaperones, and this is not something we came up with. This language is kind of from other areas and what they've done, and just trying to put caps on that so that we don't get a lot of kids that come into the pool with limited supervision. So we wanted to put some caps on that, especially from out of town. We felt that in talking to the YMCA, there's been in the past a lot of abuse of that policy where we have lower rates and a lot of kids come in there from out of town, non-residents, and drop these kids off and spend all day there, and that kind of gets us to our capacity a lot quicker. So we wanted to follow some of these guidelines of what we could do to curb that a little bit, and we looked at adding some of these rules that are in there. The rule changes are in red in the copy you have there, and I just wanted to get some feedback on our board and see what they thought of that. I don't know if you've had a chance to review these. I'm sorry I was so late again.
So my only concern after looking at it and now looking at it again, chaperones must be at least 16. Why isn't that 18?
I know 16 is because our lifeguards are 16.
Okay.
I think that's the limit on that. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, it's that, and that a lot of counselors happen to be high school students too, so it's who's watching the kids at these camps.
Okay.
It's not, we were blessed to be, that's
Well,
just what you're seeing.
are we speaking in particular of like Mingo? Or are you
Yes.
speaking Y and?
Mingo, this is Mingo only. This is
Okay.
not the Y.
Because most of the organizations, unless there's a lot more variety than what I'm used to, because way back in like, I don't know, 2013,
Mhm.
there's a group that I would bring there, and
Mhm.
most of the staff were 18.
I can tell you,
So-
at least through the Y,
Sure.
my daughter was on there, was a teen leaders group.
Okay.
And they utilized those teen leaders as chaperones for the kids.
Okay.
And those teen leaders could be 14.
Got it.
So, yeah.
I get it. I just was
Yeah.
like, holy moly.
I know, it's,
Sorry.
yeah. And again, there'll be, there's some local groups like SAC that we want to make sure we're going to work with specifically. And, you know, one of the things that we're looking at doing is maybe opening up the pool for those groups specifically at 11 to 1 o'clock or something, where we try to keep them in a certain time frame, but also spread them out too, so that they all don't come on Tuesdays or something. That we have some Tuesdays, Thursdays, some, you know, Mondays and Wednesdays, and work with them and coordinate that a little bit better, particularly with our local groups, our local residents.
So I work for the schools and have children who attend SAC, and that was obviously the first group that I thought of. I had no idea that so other groups outside of the community are coming in as well.
Mhm.
That's, okay,
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
That's one of
is-
our concerns, and that's kind of our, where we want to kind of try to limit that as much. We want to cater to our residents
Yeah,
first,
Yeah,
is our goal.
yeah.
Hey, Ted?
Yes.
Was that the outside groups part of the reasons why there were certain days where the pool closed because of overcrowding?
I think that contributed to it.
Okay.
I can't specifically say that is what, but I think it contributed to it.
If
Thank
you
you.
need contact information, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the Y has reached out to these groups
Okay.
before, but
Okay.
we want to get a little bit more coordinated with them.
Yeah.
So we're, because, you know, it might be some days we get inundated with these groups that come in, and trying to plan for that a little bit, and also that helps us not reach capacity. If we can do that, that's our goal there.
Yeah.
I personally don't have a major concern with it, but I'm curious as to hear your level of concern about taking away Mingo as an option or as a benefit of having a Y membership. Do you
I agree.
anticipate feedback on that?
Yeah, we anticipate feedback, but that's something we've discussed with the YMCA, and right now I think is it like a $2 fee right now in addition to the Y membership?
I didn't think it was any fee.
There's no fee.
It was
Well, it's like an
included.
add-on. It's like an add-on.
They don't
it-
ask you that.
No.
Yeah.
In the past,
In the past, I thought a Y membership just got you in.
Included.
so
I thought, but I haven't been there for a while.
if you've paid for the year or you have it automatically withdrawn, it is included. I don't know how it is for folks that kind of put their membership on hold, so to speak.
Mm.
And I'm only speaking from asking about a year ago about it. So it could have changed as
I
policies
should have kept the
do.
Y here. Yeah.
Because like our membership card
Mm-hmm.
for our family, each individual has their own. We can scan them at Mingo just like we scan
Yeah.
them at the Y.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And it's not an additional fee for when Mingo is open.
It's not.
It's just included.
It
Yeah,
is, it
last
is,
year
it's,
was
she's
that
right,
way.
it's just included. And
Okay.
residents get a discount at the, I mean,
Because
so.
according to the YMCA, it's been an additional fee, a monthly fee. It's an add-on. You add it on. You have to make that choice to, you choose Mingo.
wanna check your
pool.
So
bill.
if
You
I,
know,
I mean,
look at
I've
the bill.
checked, I've checked my bill. I can say that if I called the Y right now and asked the question that you just asked,
Mm-hmm.
we might both get different answers.
I would agree with that.
So I'm not saying,
It's
That-
true. That is
Yeah.
true.
I'll have to get with the YMCA next. We discussed this with them, and so one of the reasons, did you hear they lowered the rates for this year?
yes.
And
I
that
knew
was
that.
The
yeah,
Y
that was,
rates, yes.
yeah, and that was one of the changes that was gonna be to the membership was that, you know, it didn't automatically include a Y, but in the past, it's supposedly been but it's been a really minimal fee, but that you had a choice between a Mingo membership or a couple other choices in there too. But part of lowering that fee was that it would just change over to, that wouldn't include a Jack Florence pool membership also.
A few years ago, it was like that because we had separate cards for Mingo, and they wanted their own pictures of each person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was maybe even before you moved to
Since
Delaware.
we've been here, it's,
But then they realized how much they had, in a sense, lost.
Yeah, I'll have to speak, I'll have to get back with them on that, cause I maybe, but that's the way I was understanding, cause that when they backed the fees down, lowered the fees, that was one of the caveats that they were gonna add to, that it did not include a membership. But I'll look into that a little bit more and maybe have a Y discuss that.
and I would also then, you know, I understand and I see the fees, talking about the fees. My only question and wonder is, and before you said that, I was thinking, what about our families, who don't make a lot of money? Like, I just don't want this to impact our families who already struggle to find affordable recreation in Central Ohio. I want them to be able to access that pool, and I wanna be sure that we're not gonna, it's like not a double whammy here where they're
Like
gonna.
the rate, are you talking about the rate sheet?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, if you can see on there, the one thing on the rate sheet, I didn't wanna, get too much into the resident fees. We wanted to keep those almost status quo. I know some of them are changing, but like, when you talk about like, the resident of a family of two, looking at changing it from 145 to 150. It's a $5 increase, but the non-resident rate, you know, we've looked at increasing that by like $100.
Okay.
So yeah, there are some pretty big increases, but they're really isolated to the non-resident fees.
Okay.
And, you know, looking across the board at some of these other fees, that's, just trying to look at that, but we wanted to have the least impact on our residents.
Well, that's not exactly accurate for those families who are YMCA members and had it included.
That's
If
what
they
I'm-
had it included.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess too, though, I guess you gotta look at it, if you go back to what you guys were talking about earlier, if the city of Delaware takes over Mingo Pool, then it's no longer
Correct.
affiliated with the
Yes.
YMCA, so then how do you let YMCA members get into the Mingo Pool for free?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Which actually, that's the question I have. Are we being proactive by doing this? Is that why we're doing this?
No, not necessarily, but the other thing that is that with the rate decrease in the YMCA membership, that was about 20% decrease, I think that was in there.
Who taught, like, I can tell you that,
You
I'm
had
not
to have
gonna
got it.
tell you you're wrong, but I'm gonna tell you you're wrong, cause my payment, what they're withdrawing from my checking account hasn't changed.
Have you asked them about that? Because it-
You might have some secret Ted Miller knowledge.
Mine rate went down.
I'll have to look.
So are you considered a family or?
Yes, we're a family, 2 of us.
Huh, maybe they picked out of a hat who they gave it to and who
Well,
they didn't.
if you did not, because it was you should be checking with that, because there was a
Okay.
decrease.
Okay.
When was that supposed to start?
The beginning of the
told
year.
us?
Yeah, the
This
beginning
year?
of the year.
2020?
Beginning of this year?
Yeah, beginning of this
Oh.
year.
This year.
Oh, 2020, I mean, it's
Does
January.
2020 start in January or
It's
February?
I
Yeah.
don't know, it's,
I'm just-
Christmas just got done, who knows? Okay, so this isn't like been a 6-month thing that we're all sitting here not knowing that.
It's been a 6-month discussion, but it was
Okay.
unveiled the beginning of this
Okay.
year, yes.
That makes me feel better, that I
How
have
is that
no
announced?
idea.
Because I would have no reason to.
How does
Yeah.
community members
Okay.
know that?
There's supposed to be signs in the Y, and there was also information supposedly going out to the Y members.
I haven't seen
saw
signs
it
at the
on
Y
Facebook,
and I've
but
been there
I
almost every day.
I'll be there.
And we didn't know till we got our checking
It's
account looked
fine,
at.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll have to, again, I'll have to have the Y here. We'll have to need to have them stay longer at these meetings. So, they, from what I understand, they had signs up in the lobby, so.
On January 1st and took them down there? or-
Yeah. So,
I,
Could send an email out to everybody.
going back to the whole pool thing, I'm gonna slightly deviate, even though I probably have already done it before, from the red marks to the black marks. With a daughter who dives for the city of Delaware and now Delaware City Schools, it's really frustrating that she is not allowed to practice at her own pool, that we actually have to drive her to Dublin or to Worthington to practice, to compete for the city that she competes for. Because by the time she's a senior in high school, which thankfully I'm still a little ways away from that, she has to do 11 dives. One of those dives does not require a flip. The other 10 require some sort of flip or twist. And Delaware does not allow flipping off the diving board. For some strange reason, they're the only community in central Ohio that I'm aware has that policy.
right, we've had this discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a YMCA rule, or is that because, you know, YMCA brings a certain set of rules that, with the organization too there too.
I know the health department also regulates what we can do with the fulcrums and what we can't do with the fulcrums during open swimming.
Well, and again, I know, like I said, we drive her to Worthington, we drive her to Dublin. She's gone to the Highlands Park, is a really nice park too. We go to all of those because she can do whatever she wants there. Now, the one thing a lot of them don't do for safety reason is an inward, which is where they stand backwards on the board, jump up, and then go straight down, because a lot of kids, unfortunately, especially practicing, will hit their heads on the board. That we completely get, but to do a flip, a twist, a tuck, or whatever it is, she can't do any of that. So we have to go pay the visitor rates in Worthington or Dublin for her to get any practice, even though she competes for the city of Delaware. She just can't do it at her own pool. So,
Have you looked at our insurance policy? Because I thought in the past it had to do with how the policy was written.
Well, that could be, but there's also rules, and I know other communities may have it, but yeah, I'd have to look into that. I don't know the answer for sure on that why flips. Because again, the pool right now follows the Y.
Right.
Like capacity, they have different capacity standards than the state does, so.
yeah, and I know that's all based off
Well, before the
lifeguards, if I
Y,
remember
they weren't
right.
allowed to do flips either.
Honestly, she's too young.
Yeah,
to
well,
have-
my kids were there then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Couldn't do them then either.
No, we could never do them as far as I've been around.
Not as long as I've been here.
Back on your Y membership rate,
Mhm.
it did go down. Mine went down $2.57, so you were right.
No, not
Just
sure-
wanted to let you know, communication.
not sure
If
that's
these
20%.
change, how are they getting communicated?
Well, that's part of the reason we want to move this forward is early in the year so that we can get communication out to the members and the community. So that's, this is, like I said, we're in draft form now, and
When's the final form gonna be ready?
when's the what gonna be ready?
Like, are you saying you want this in place by like April?
Yeah, we want to get this in place this year, if possible, yeah. Why, what?
Well, so me being me and being a budgeter for our family, I'm already budgeting for like June.
Mhm.
So I would say if we could get this out by March 1st, we would need to. If you're wanting this to be in place for summer 2020,
As
which
early
I
as possible,
believe
yeah.
that's what you're saying.
Mhm.
And for people that might be saving some of their tax return, I would get it out so they'd know way ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we'd like to get it as soon as possible,
Mhm.
but that's why we're trying to get input on it now. We've been working with the Y on this and trying to, you know, they've inputted on this, the city's inputted on this, now we want to go to the boards and get input on it also.
I mean, as far as the changes go, my only concern was taking it out of the Y. I assumed I knew why you were doing it, and I don't disagree with it. That was my only concern that I saw. As far as the rate proposals go, I have no issues with those. I appreciate the fact that when you look at family memberships, it's like a $5 increase. They're not really increasing at all, so I appreciate that. And then looking at the other communities, I appreciate the fact that Delaware helps its citizens keep things affordable. We're definitely on the low end of the spectrum, so it's nice to see that and good to know that. I have no issues with any of those. I was just curious about the whole YMCA thing because I can see that becoming a potential issue.
The only other thing I want to add about the organized groups are school-age childcare has very specific ratio guidelines that they have to maintain and follow. And I would really want that communication with them prior to this rule going into effect, because if this doesn't meet their ratio, they would either A, have to add staff, or they couldn't come. And I would really hate for those groups not to be able to utilize
Yeah,
the
I
pool.
think one of the things that the Y mentioned in that was some of the SAC regulations there. They wouldn't, so we may look at some updates on that.
Okay.
And that's one of the programs we really need to work with.
Yes.
It's a local program.
Yes, and they're wonderful.
Mhm.
I had a
Yeah.
meeting with her this morning.
Yeah.
She's great, the woman that directs the program for Delaware City. I know they have very specific ratios, and the age split alone may be problematic with how they divide groups, just things like that, I really would, I know they would appreciate having conversation ahead of time, because if it's a little tweak that's not gonna really change this, but it would fit their need, I think that's just worth a proactive conversation.
Okay. Yeah, we will definitely the Y will reach out to them more and have that conversation a little bit more. And not just them, also other groups that they've worked with in the past at the pool to kind of touch base with those also.
I was actually going to mention that all of these ratios, if you go to the ODJFS website, that's where the ratios are at, and anybody can find them.
And that's exactly what SAC has to follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're doing all their summer planning now. When I
Yes,
was
they
a
are.
site manager,
Yes, they
I
are.
had to have all my summer planning in by Valentine's Day. So if you've not communicated with them about some of this, I would definitely let them know, because I know, for instance, when my kids attended SAC and went to the pool and we had a membership, we had to supply our membership number well in advance. Otherwise, because it reduced the rate
changed the
SAC,
fee, right.
yeah, it reduced the rate the SAC paid for those going to the pool, and that
Right.
PO has to be in, I want to say in May. So some of this, I feel like we as a board or you as other boards are gonna have to put into place really soon because of all of the summer plans that people are making. And
Right. No, it's definitely, that's kind of why that's why I kind of wanted to make sure we discussed it tonight and not waited on that. So that's kind of why I made sure we added it at the last minute. We're still getting comments this week, so I wanted to make sure we got it in there. Anything else? Go ahead.
Just, not a big deal, but on your spreadsheet here, where you have the averages and the difference, I'm pretty sure that some of those are off. I think that it counted the not applicable as 0.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, because I just noticed one that I thought looked funny, and then I figured that's probably what the computer did.
Yeah, because there are formulas in there right now. I'll double check those again.
Yeah, I'm just guessing that was what the mistake was.
Ted, I'm curious about enforcement, how some of these rules are going to be enforced. I think in the past we've talked about the pool having a shortage of staff as it is. So I'm curious how this is going to be, some of these things are going to be enforced. Like I'm just reading one that says youth under the age of 12 must be accompanied by an adult. Who's going to ensure that happens? Or how is that going to be
A
monitored?
lot of that will happen upon entrance when, if they do, as they enter the pool. And again, I would have to refer to the YMCA on how they were going to enforce that. Again, they're going to be running the pool this year. I'd have to talk to them a little bit more about how they would enforce that. But I can always get some of these answers and get back with the board on this.
I mean, I can see how it can be enforced with a family membership, but I guess I'm not understanding how it would be enforced with an individual pass, a day pass. Do they ask the age of the child?
Well, they're usually in the system out there.
It's a, yeah.
Scan.
Well, not if you're just paying.
No, I mean, if you're
per
just a
visit.
daily attendance thing.
Oh,
and-
for a daily
yeah.
attendance, but a lot of them even on daily attendance are in there too, I think, a lot of times. Just like when you go into Mingo, you get scanned in there too, just to go into open gym.
True.
So
So, take me back a minute, because maybe you said this and maybe I should have read it. How is the Y managing the pool if they're not gonna recognize, in a sense, Y memberships? How is that gonna be held separate? Is it a,
Well, we pay the Y to manage our recreation programming now.
okay,
Yeah, and manage the pool. So they'll still be contracted by the city this year in 2020.
okay. And does that end at the end of 2020?
That hasn't been decided yet officially, but that it's still in place in 2020.
So if we have a staff shortage, it's gonna be their responsibility?
Correct.
Okay,
I guess the only last comment I would make is that if we're gonna change these prices, that has to get advertised quickly.
Yes.
And much better than possibly the Y pricing.
Yeah.
Much better than the rate
So
decrease.
so piggybacking on that, seeing as how we don't meet until St. Patrick's Day, do you need something from us today? Or are there still lingering
I think I need to
questions?
update some of your questions, and then I'd like to communicate through email, and maybe if I can get responses back on email, that'll give me a consensus of the board a little bit, I think there, allowing us to move forward. So I'd like to get some of these answers that you have brought up tonight, and then I can do that with the YMCA in the next couple days, and kind of get back to you that way. So we can
Okay.
kind of keep it moving forward, if you're all right with that.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
I'd rather not do anything tonight, because I think there's too many questions out there right now.
I don't know if there's concerns about policies. Maybe there were.
Just the
Chaperone thing.
Yep, I didn't have anything
Right.
else under staff comments right now.
So that's all for staff comments?
Yep.
All right. On to member comments. Hearing none?
I've got
Oh.
one, sir.
Thanks, Mike.
Not a problem, my pleasure. I want to thank you two for coming and helping us out. After being a 51-year resident of the city, like Corey, who's been here 25.
52 years.
We've both seen the, like she said, the ebbs and flows of the city and the way it's growing. About 3 years ago, Money Magazine ranked Delaware City 71 out of 100 of the best places to raise a family. So thank you for helping us not only maintain that, but possibly make it closer to number one. So thank you.
All right, any others? All right. Reminder, our next meeting, no February, since we're doing every other month. So March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, wear your green.
And please come sober.
And it is 7:43, and we are adjourned.
Don't forget the minutes, please.
It's actually recorded, so. Live stream.